They may never say it outright, but the unspoken verdict is clear. If you have not made it by 30, you probably never will. They dress it up as realism, but it is quiet dismissal. And over time, the danger is not their judgment, it is that you start to agree with it. You see younger people gaining attention, wealth, and influence. And somewhere in the stillness of your own thoughts, you begin to wonder if your chance has already passed. It is a sentence served in silence, reinforced every time you scroll through a highlight reel that makes your life feel incomplete. The questions from friends. So, what are you doing these days? Land like subtle reminders that your story is not keeping up with the timeline the world has written for you. There is a quiet kind of shame that does not shout. It whispers, I should be further by now. But what if this delay is not a mistake? What if the years you think of as wasted were in fact the forge where your resilience, perspective, and discernment were shaped? There is a truth the culture rarely admits. The fires that burn the longest are those that take the most time to catch. Early success dazzles, but often burns itself out on shallow foundations. Late bloomers are not idle. They are gathering the kind of depth that cannot be rushed. You have been learning what no textbook or seminar can truly impart. Patience, pattern recognition, emotional endurance, the ability to stand alone. The modern world worships speed and volume because they are visible, but it is those who work quietly, slowly, and with purpose who build things that last beyond them. We measure ourselves by clocks and calendars, forgetting that those instruments only track time, not readiness. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that what stands in the way becomes the way. Delays, obstacles, even long periods of obscurity can become the very foundation for what is to come. Perhaps you were not meant to rise when you still needed applause to believe in yourself. Perhaps you were meant to arrive when the roots ran deep enough that no rejection could pull you back out. So, if you have ever stood in front of a mirror and felt the weight of the question, why does it feel like I'm still waiting? Consider that you are not behind, you are on the verge. The lie that life's pinnacle must occur in youth is a quiet, persistent myth. It is in the way careers are glorified when they begin early, the way media obsess over 20-year-old prodigies, the way industries like technology and entertainment subtly dismiss the over 40 crowd. You rarely hear it stated plainly, but it is everywhere, like background noise. You stop noticing until you realize it has shaped your thoughts. This belief has roots in a culture that confuses novelty for value. We bought into it when we were young, believing that speed meant skill, that hype meant worth, that arriving quickly was the only way to matter. And so many sprinted, not toward mastery, but toward validation. But that sprint is not where true power lives. It is not failure to move slowly. The real failure is believing that slowness is proof you are unworthy. That belief is not yours. It was handed to you, reinforced in conversation, in media, in subtle gestures. Napoleon Hill called it the law of cosmic habit force. Thoughts repeated long enough become internal law. The voice telling you it's too late is not your intuition. It is residue from a culture that does not understand the value of time. And if even part of what you've heard so far strikes something in you, then don't turn away now, because the next stages will dismantle the false timeline you were given, reveal why your current season holds more power than you realize, and show you exactly how to turn quiet preparation into undeniable impact. By the end, you will not just see late blooming differently, you will see yourself differently. Subscribe now, not for another motivational video, but to make sure you have the complete map. The moment of arrival is coming, and what's ahead will change how you move through the rest of your life. What does youth truly bring? Energy, yes. Confidence, sometimes, but also inexperience, volatility, and the fragile need to be seen. Early victories often sit on unstable ground, a self-worth built on praise rather than purpose, a career shaped by trends rather than principles. When success comes before identity, it is easy to build a life that belongs more to public expectation than to personal conviction. And when the applause fades, so too does the sense of self. The late bloomer, by contrast, has already walked through the silence. They have known invisibility, endured rejection, and yet continued. They build not for recognition, but for substance. Not for the rush of attention, but for the satisfaction of creating something that will outlast the noise. History is filled with such figures. Harland Sanders was 65 when he franchised his first chicken restaurant after a lifetime of failed ventures. Vera Wang entered fashion design at 40 after years in unrelated fields. Japanese artist Katsushika Hokusai created his most renowned work, The Great Wave off Kanagawa, in his 70s, believing that true mastery only began in later life. These are not stories of late blooming in the sense of delay. They are stories of arriving when the foundation was finally unshakable. As Carl Jung observed in his writings on individuation, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And this often happens only in the second half of life, when the masks given by youth begin to fall away. To reach that stage, you must confront a quieter and more persistent adversary than any competitor. The narrative running inside your own mind. Most people are not defeated by lack of opportunity, but by the sentences they repeat to themselves until they harden into truth. I am too old for this. If only I had started sooner. That window has closed. These phrases seem harmless, even rational, but they operate like slow-moving poison, shaping decisions, narrowing vision, and eroding possibility. Hill's principle of autosuggestion works both ways. Repetition can build conviction or cement limitation. This is why transformation cannot rely solely on willpower. If the environment around you reinforces the old programming, you will eventually bend back into its shape. We become, in Hill's words, the average of the people we spend the most time with, not only in skill or financial standing, but in thought, energy, and expectation. Influence is subtle. A single phrase, repeated over months and years, can carve into your identity like water on stone. A group that speaks constantly of limitation will train you to think within it, even if you never fully agree. Guarding your environment is not an act of cruelty, but of survival. It may mean stepping back from conversations that glorify the past and dismiss the future. It may mean declining invitations that keep you in circles defined by regret. It may even mean enduring solitude for a time so that your new identity can take root without being trampled by familiar doubts. Growth requires space, and the late bloomer must protect that space fiercely, because their rise is not built in the spotlight. It is built in the quiet, day after day, until one day the work becomes too solid to ignore. Letting go of who you once thought you should be is not a small act. It is a form of grief. You may find yourself mourning the version of you who, in your 20s, believed in certain timelines, certain milestones, certain markers of worth. That younger self might have been full of energy and optimism, but much of it was rooted in borrowed dreams. Jung called this the death of the persona, the mask you wore to gain approval, to belong, to survive the early chapters of life. That mask served its purpose, but it cannot take you into what comes next. True growth means thanking it for what it gave you, then laying it down. This transition is not immediate. Between the death of the old self and the birth of the new is a season I call the void. It is an in-between space where you no longer fit into your former life, but the next one is not yet visible. The void is quiet, unglamorous, and deeply uncomfortable. There are no accolades here, no confirmation from the outside world that you are on the right path. But like a seed underground, this is where the real work happens. Roots form in the dark before anything breaks the surface. Identity is rebuilt here, silently, until the structure is strong enough to withstand the weight of visibility. It is during this period that the temptation to compare yourself to others becomes most dangerous. You will see the quick rises of the young, the seemingly certain strides of peers who appear to be ahead. But as history repeatedly shows, speed is not the same as strength, and noise is not the same as depth. Many of those who reshape the world, scientists, artists, leaders, first disappeared into obscurity before returning, transformed. Galileo spent years under house arrest, using the quiet to refine his ideas. Emily Dickinson wrote nearly her entire body of work, unseen by the public, only to have it define her legacy long after her passing. The void is not a detour, it is the path. And the late bloomer who can endure this stage without rushing to fill it gains an advantage that cannot be manufactured: the patience to let transformation take its full shape. When you emerge from it, you do not return as an improved version of the old self. You return as someone unrecognizable even to yourself. Clearer, steadier, unshakable. And when that happens, you no longer enter rooms trying to be noticed. You enter rooms and change them simply by being. We live in a culture obsessed with acceleration. Followers over foundations. Speed over structure. Style over substance. But what the world is quietly starving for is wisdom. Not the kind found in quick quotes or fleeting trends, but the kind earned through seasons of silence, setbacks, and reinvention. Late bloomers are uniquely positioned to offer this. They have endured failure without losing the will to try again. They have been underestimated enough times to stop chasing validation. Their fuel is not ambition for applause, but conviction to build what lasts. This shift from proving yourself to offering yourself is what turns effort into legacy. As Confucius observed, it does not matter how slowly you go, as long as you do not stop. The late bloomer understands this instinctively. They have learned that visibility is not the same as value, that trending is not the same as timeless. They move not to catch up, but to set a standard. And when they act, it is deliberate, grounded, and nearly impossible to derail. The work that matters most will not announce itself. There will be no applause the day you finally choose to rebuild. In fact, the first phase will feel lonely, not because you are forgotten, but because those around you do not yet recognize the person you are becoming. That is how real change begins, not with a grand unveiling, but with a quiet decision repeated daily, until it becomes your nature. You will have no trophies for healing, no headlines for persistence. But the absence of recognition is not a loss. It is a safeguard, protecting the fragile architecture of your new self until it can stand on its own. The real enemy is not time, but comfort. Comfort loops you into old patterns, into chasing lives scripted by someone else's rules. To break free, you must bring your inner life into coherence, when your words, choices, and actions all align with the person you have been becoming in private. That is when you stop talking about change and start walking it without announcement. If you are in a season of quiet right now, if no one sees the hours, the discipline, the inner rewiring, stay there. Let that silence sharpen you. Let the doubt in others build pressure inside you. When you return, do so with such depth that even you cannot fully recognize the person you were before. Your story does not end in obscurity. It begins there, and when you emerge, it will not be with the intention of being noticed. It will be because you have become unavoidable.